vision in action. You left lifelong fulfillment, vision in action. You left lifelong fulfillment, vision in action. Live.
And welcome to another edition of Vision in Action Live. I'm Jim Boswell, your host for the Lifelong Fulfillment Initiative of Personal Development. I'm the author of Lifelong Fulfillment, Take Charge of Your Life, its companion website, and this podcast, Vision in Action Live. On this podcast, we focus on expert knowledge and solutions that contribute to individual personal development. These are the competencies that allow you to construct and pursue the complete vision of your best authentic life. We bring you the experts in every conceivable discipline to help inform your thinking about your own journey to lifelong fulfillment. So welcome to our episode today. And today we have with us Ms. Francie Jane. She's the founder and CEO of Terawatt, which is a B2B, business to business, for those of you that don't speak that acronym. So a B2B marketplace for group coaching that helps employers and employees and coaches deliver solutions. Francie comes to this with an AB from Princeton and an MBA from the University of Chicago, Booth School of Business. And as a consequence, she's an expert in coaching, educational technology, marketplaces, and actually transforming strategies into culture. Terawatt's Francie's third venture behind Next Chapter and West River Partners, so she understands the entrepreneurial world. Welcome, Ms. Jane. It's a pleasure to have you on Vision in Action Live today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just delighted to be here and jump into this conversation.
Great. So we're going to talk about the future of work, learning, and development to try and bring individuals and corporation perspectives together so that everybody has a learning opportunity here. And so why don't we start out with an introduction about Terawatt. This is an interesting business model. I'm kind of interested in how that plays, if you can acquaint us with that.
Yeah, my pleasure. So Terawatt, the easiest way to sort of orient yourself about what is Terawatt is I'd like to say we're kind of like Airbnb for executive coaching. So, which means that we are a marketplace. So that means we take a commission based on a match. So we're kind of a matchmaker. And we're not doing it with individuals, we're doing it with businesses, with employers. And the idea is that we are a form of professional development that's scalable for businesses to bring in-house. So like, I'm trying not to use the startup language, but basically the idea is we're trying to make it really easy for employers to improve the work product or the impact to the organization from their employees. But what's interesting is that that's a goal that both employees and employers have. So right now, a huge driver of turnover in businesses is looking for professional development, is looking to grow in your career, right? So any organization that supports the professional development of employees is very intriguing to employees. But what's interesting is there's no downside for employers, because if you make your employee better, that contributes to the metrics and the growth of the organization. And it's really an investment in the organization. So what we are basically saying is, listen, we're making it really easy for you to bring in outside experts that are highly customized to the needs of your employees. So the one group that we think we can be really helpful with is, I call it the sophisticated middle. So these are people whose professional development is typically going to conferences or maybe zero. Maybe you're sending them to a big conference in Las Vegas, and you're paying for the conference fee, for the lodging, for the food, for the travel. And we say for like a fraction of that or the same amount, if you like to, let's use that as a budget, we can very easily do coaching for them for 6 months or a year in a larger group. So the difference is, one, it's no longer individualized. I mean, the goals are individualized, but the recipients are in a group. And the idea is group discussions where you're learning from an expert. So the individuals are splitting the rate of the coach. So let's say we've got a coach who makes $1,000 an hour. You could split that by 5 employees. You could split it by 40 employees. So you could do it virtually. You could do it in person. You know, there's a lot of different ways to work on that. But the idea is that these sophisticated middle people have access to experts who are very expensive, but it's made more affordable by bringing the group. And what we recommend is the group come from the organization, one organization, so that it could be, the groups could be made up of any which way. It could be sort of seniority level. It could be rising leaders. It could be affinity groups. It really could be any which way. But the thing is that we really think the best professional development is a result of an opting in by the employees. And so we work on that with employers. So really to summarize it all down, it's really just bringing group coaching to employers that's highly customized, but it's really easy for employers. So it's just making it really easy for employers to do what they would like to be doing, but don't have the bandwidth to do.
Right. So what kind of subject matter experts would you have in your stable of consultants, advisors, and so forth?
We have all kinds. So what I like to say is I like to have all the stars in the sky. So we have, you know, almost everyone overlaps on leadership, but then there are specialists as well. So like we have people who are experts in public speaking. We have professors of negotiation. We have psychology PhDs. We have people who developed their own like learning modules, just incredibly interesting people. And we don't have any real must-have for coaches, except that they must be talented. And that's kind of our secret sauce. But so, you know, we evaluate for talent. We do background checks. We do all sorts of social media checks. And we really want great coaches on the platform. But what's interesting is also our coaches want great coaches on the platform because they have reputational risk. Yeah. And so we're all in it together to make sure that like anyone we bring in is a really high caliber, because we don't want to lose the coaches we already have. So really could be anything. I like to start with employers by saying like, what's a problem you're looking to solve, or maybe a metric you'd like to change? Because I think that if you're not starting from a quantitative perspective, it all gets a little bit woo-woo and it's hard to evaluate if it's working or not. And I think that's really interesting when we take a quantitative approach to results in this space, because I think that that's like, and we can get into the future of work discussion, but I think that's the future of work, and especially the future of HR is quantifying impact. And so we make it easy for employers to do that.
Right. And I wanted to mention for our audience, I had occasion to talk to you and Dr. Stephen Long, who is one of your experts, about the Prosperity Index. And that's kind of the mindset that you have about the way you work and how that might contribute to corporate success and your own. And I have to admit that was very enlightening, and very clearly as a PhD, you know, he is truly an expert, and it was great to hear that information. So, so it sounds like if I'm a company or I'm an association, or I might want to, you know, get some information embedded with my employees about issues I have, say as a company, I've got a new challenge, I need to migrate in that direction, and I don't feel we have the requisite skill sets or enough of them, then I can come to you. Now, does Terawatt tailor that program? Are they the intermediary between yourself, or excuse me, me, the company, and say the experts who would deliver this kind of training? How does that occur?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, basically what we do is we help employers come up with an RFP, basically.
Okay.
So, you know, because we speak coach, and employers don't necessarily speak coach, right? And so we try to make it easier on both sides. So we kind of are like this matchmaker, we're the negotiator, we're the synthesizer, right, of like the information that's trying to be passed back and forth. But so the main thing is, like, for instance, I'm working on a search right now for one-on-one coaching for a female leader. There wasn't too much, there weren't too many must-haves by this organization, but their clear thing was the budget. So we started there. But then I know when someone's looking for coaching, they want, these 10 things, right? That's pretty common.
Right.
And because it's a woman, I also suggested, or I asked, would you like the coaches to be female coaches or non-binary? And the employer said yes. So that helped narrow us down. And so then, then I asked other questions, like, they're on the West Coast. Okay, well, does it matter the location of your coach, the time zone? Is that important for your employee? No, that wasn't important. Great. So we asked a few questions like that. And then what I did is I wrote up an RFP. And I said, these are the things we're looking for. These are the must-haves. These are the nice-to-haves. The budget is firm. So
Right.
if this is outside of your budget, then this is not for you, move along. But if it's within your budget, please send us a proposal. And what I always say to the coaches is, we want you to lead with your expertise and educate the buyer about what you know about this exact situation and what you've seen work. Because Terawatt, I'm not a coach. Personally, Francie is not a coach. And I don't want to take a position, and Terawatt doesn't take a position on what is good, like what is a good way to coach. We just know who are talented coaches who can make impact in people's lives. And so then we let them tell the employer what they think. And so we just make it easier for them to communicate their ideas. And we want everyone to be a star and to be unique and individual, because, if I'm a buyer, I want to be educated about, like, maybe why I was wrong about something I said in the RFP or some assumption I had,
Yeah.
or I want to learn about why they had a unique experience that's actually perfect for this situation. And so I want all of that to come out. So we send out an RFP, and just say, I read an RFP, I send it to the employer, and I say, is this accurate? Is this kind of what you had in mind? Does this feel like, if I sent this out to coaches, would you feel like this represents your wishes? And the person who was my contact said, yes, that's great, go for it. And so then I reached out to all of our female and non-binary coaches. They're not my employees, excuse me. They're not employees, they're 1099. So I reached out to them and said, this is an RFP we have, here's a strict budget. Please, this budget needs to be your maximum. You can offer below, or you can sort of like offer all the services up to this maximum. And please, talk about why your experience could be relevant for this need. And so now I'm just putting that all together in a presentation, and I'm trying to make it easy for the employer and the employee to kind of go through and look at the different coaches. We ended up having, I think 16 proposals, which I was surprised by, that was a lot, because it wasn't a very high budget. And this is the thing about coaches and about Terawatt, is you never know how a coach is going to see their market rate. And that's also why I love a marketplace. So some coaches will see it as, listen, like, I'd like to establish a relationship, and I'm okay, not getting my top rate for this. Maybe I will get hired further on down the line because I love doing one-on-one coaching. So here's my entry level thing, and hopefully they'll renew. Someone else might think, well, I'm going to just, only have 2 sessions because my market rate's much higher. And that's how I wanted to reflect in this proposal, and set a standard for my market rate, and I won't go below. And other people just want to get in reps, and they might offer a lot of coaching just to have more experience. And to me, that's the power of a marketplace, is you really start to see that you have so many options, and it's so much easier than individually reaching out to coaches, and it really is a one-stop shop. So we're putting together this presentation. It's got 16 proposals, and I've kind of made it more into bite sizes and some bullet points. And then I just sent it off to an employer this morning. And so that's kind of how we work with them. And then the question for them is, okay, well, how do you want to go forward. Like, would you like me to maybe make a matrix of what these people are offering and show visually how they're different? Or there are a few people whose backgrounds you and or the leader really like, and maybe you'd like to have another few questions for these people. We try not to have calls until it's like the final one, because the coach's time is really valuable and it kind of annoys them if there's too much pitching, because I think
Right.
they're like coming to Terawatt to reduce the pitching, and so I try to be thoughtful about that.
Right.
And then we'll get to a point where they've picked one person, and we have a chemistry call just to make sure. And then they pay in advance. That's a big, it's a logistical
Right.
about Terawatt, just because there have many coaches in the past get worried about not being paid.
Right.
So anyway, so that's kind of how it works logistically.
Yeah. So are these both like Zoom sessions like we're having here today? And are they in person as well?
Yeah, it could, exactly. It could really be whatever the buyer wants. My joke is that these coaches are capitalists. So if you pay them for their travel time and you pay for their travel and their hotel, they're delighted to come to you.
Yeah.
I always advocate for virtual because it's less expensive, and I really do believe you can develop very strong relationships over virtual.
Right.
But some people are really, for them, in person is really, really important. And so, and part of it, I think, actually could be like when it's in person, you can just say to someone, put your phone over in that corner, don't look at it for the next 2 hours.
Right.
The distraction factor, I think, is lower.
Mhm.
And especially when you're, what is it, how do you call it, herding cats, when you really need to get a lot of like different people together in a room. Maybe sometimes you can just say, it's just a 3-hour chunk, make everything work, and then you can go and go on your merry way. Sometimes that does help for people. So everyone has a different perspective. And again, also it's about scheduling. So, sometimes that's where we can come in handy. Like if they, let's say the buyer looking at like 4 coaches they really liked, I might reach out to those 4 coaches and say, do you have any blackout dates in the next 6 months or 8 months? And then that might help them know, because if let's say a coach is like in Indonesia for like 3 months in the summer, that just might not work for the buyer, right? And that might be a way to whittle it down.
Right.
So that kind of thing we work on.
Yeah. Okay. Are there, in your current experience with people that come to you, are there particular hot button issues that are coming up repeatedly that are really popular to be addressed?
I'll say the thing that comes up repeatedly that I always find interesting is that there's often a disconnect between the buyer of coaching and the recipient of coaching.
Okay.
And it's so interesting because let's say you're the head of HR, the head of learning and development. You're like, listen, I got this budget. I really want to do coaching. I'm really worried about these group of people. I'm really worried about burnout. And can we put something together? And so this happened. And I said, of course, yes. But then as we were speaking, it became clear, but we just wanted to make sure, because it was going to be like something like 40 employees were doing this training.
Right.
And so we really wanted to make sure that the coach was speaking to like what was valuable to the employees. So we sent out a survey, and in that survey, we were trying to confirm that burnout was an issue. And we weren't asking like, are you burned out? But we were asking like things surrounding burnout and things surrounding, just like a organizational mismatch, that sort of speaks to burnout. And we were asking about other things, and we asked them to rank a bunch of titles. And the thing that was really interesting that came out after all everyone, responded to the survey is that nothing with burnout really was popping. Like there wasn't like a lot of results showing that burnout seemed to be a problem. But the thing that was really surprising and like bursting out of this survey result was that they all were really interested in learning about communication strategies. And that was so interesting. And, one thing is, it's possible communication strategies can lead to burnout. I mean, it's not that the person buying it may not be wrong, but like the people responding, their immediate need was communication strategies to be better, to do better in communicating. And So we ended up doing a 5-hour training for communicating. And now actually, as a result of that, that work, we make it so that every group session starts with a survey, because we've seen it where if you don't have the survey, there's a lot of people sitting there with their arms crossed who are kind of like, oh, I don't want to be here. This is annoying. My manager's making me do this, that kind of stuff. But when you have people who you're asking their opinion, then you show their opinions in aggregate and you show them what everyone voted for. And then you say, and as a result, we're hearing you. This is what we're doing to respond to that need. Then everyone's really engaged, and it goes so much better because people are excited because they're like, oh, this is solving my problems. And I think that like, it's one of these things where you think, oh, sure, like that's not so hard. But I think when people are so busy and like having like checking out the task, they kind of forget this component of like engagement and asking people's input. And like we don't shy away from that, right? Because we don't have one thing that we sell. So it's not like you have to take A or go away. It's kind of like we love these customized things, so we can really respond to that.
So, from an industry perspective, this type of training has been around for decades, though not delivered the way you're delivering it, more one-on-one through the HR department, et cetera. And in fact, I've received some of that myself in the old fashion. Do you see that this is a burgeoning market for this type of training? And let's add to that the issue of, it seems there is just a whole lot of friction in the marketplace in general between employees or potential employees and corporate directions, and what's minimum and what's maximum, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what's the market dynamics in general here that you have to address?
Well, for one thing, yeah, I mean, for one thing, I'll say that I think, we love to talk about the future of work. And one of the things in my mind for the future of work is choice, employee choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this really plays into that really well. And especially if organizations are dealing with Gen Z dynamics, which is they expect more choice, they expect more customization, they expect professional development. This is we see this as like a very easy plug-in and kind of meeting employees like where they are, instead of saying like, okay, you want professional development, like we have a contract with Franklin Covey, so you can pick A, B, or C. It's not like we don't have set options, we don't have a set menu even. It's kind of like, we just have ingredients and we can be as creative as you want. Because especially now, like with the advent of like automation and AI and computers and surveys and, I don't know, asynchronous stuff, it's not really hard to find out what people want and respond to that in a way that makes them happy. And so for me, choice is a really important part. And I think that like, when people leave jobs, like the number one reason for like 25 years, people leave jobs for professional development, or for growth, professional growth.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so one of the things we also talk about is we say, if turnover is an issue for you, you should really do group coaching, because that is a way to lower employee turnover, increase retention, improve the organization, improve the collaboration and the communication of employees. And then also it plays into also de-siloing. I think so many things we talk about with the future of work are related to group coaching, or at least related to Terawatt and how I think about it. I think it's like really obvious, but I think the one thing that this will always be a human trend, but the one thing that goes on in HR land is I think that there's a lot of focus on the sort of tried and true, and well, why go out on a limb to do something different if I can just kind of re-up with somebody who's known and considered the gold standard. Right. And so that's a different perspective. So that perspective is usually not our customer. What we do well with are people who are looking for subject matter experts, or looking for customization, or maybe even have like a deep respect for like one-on-one coaching. Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing is, the price per employee is the same as like these old name organizations. I just think that it's more interesting to go with an individual who can bring in different, formulas or different ways, different personal assessments, different modalities, different ways to talk to people. And they kind of bring in what's appropriate as opposed to kind of like selling one model or one tool. And
Right.
that's, to me, the big difference.
Right. Yeah, because as I remember it, it was pretty much one model. And if you were going to train in another one, that's another class altogether. So, yeah. Okay.
Well, and also one thing I'll add, this happened, was also interesting. So we did have one client who also was like, oh, I want to pick this coach, but I'm really interested in, I forget the name of it now, but like this one book and this one way of thinking about coaching, right? This one way of understanding communication. And so what we were able to do is marry that with the coach's, program or how they were responding to the employees. And the idea is that it doesn't have to also be in a vacuum. You can say they have learned X, Y, and Z, and please incorporate that into what you're working on so that that knowledge they have in the past is sort of tied into what they're learning now. And it's not in contradiction or, doesn't make them question what they did before. It doesn't feel like boomeranging or anything like that. And so we'd love to do that kind of stuff as well. Coaches love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is primarily sold to businesses and so forth. So if I'm an employee, if you're doing that or planning to do that, that becomes a selling point, if you will, for me as an employee. I like it because my company's doing it. I gain benefit and hopefully can mobilize on some of the skills presented and so forth. Do you have any answer or any suggestion to those people who are in pretty small organizations or are trying to accumulate this knowledge base, on their own? Is there any kind of offering there or any suggestions that you might have for individuals?
Sure. Well, for one thing, the way we set up the website is we connect all of our vetted coaches, so background checks and all that stuff. We connect to their professional websites and areas. So like we connect to their LinkedIn, to their professional website, if they have it, a podcast. And so we do that, because they're experts. We're not trying to hide who they are, right? We're not trying to underpay them and make a spread. We think that like we added service to the coaches, so they want to use us. And but one of the reasons we do that though is so that individuals who maybe aren't part of a large group or who just want to work on themselves, they can learn from that coach. So like, if you want to hire that coach for one-on-one coaching, more power to you. That's not really like our main thing, right? We mostly want to be doing group, and we want to be doing like at scale. So for instance, we have this great coach named Christina Blacken. So she's on our website, under the coaches page. You can click through, takes you to her website. She has a ton of asynchronous learning that you can do through her direct, more power to you. Yeah. And a lot of coaches do that because for them, as they get better and more in demand, they have to figure out how to use their time effectively. Right. And there becomes a supply demand thing going on. Whereas the more you're well known and you're kind of writing books or doing whatever, the only thing that doesn't change is your time. And so like the prices go higher because like you're trying to figure out demand. But one way to keep the price low is to do these asynchronous learnings that a lot of the coaches have, or buy their book or whatever their case may be. And that's a way like dip your toe in without making a big investment. And so that's why I have that open on the website, is because, I really believe these are like excellent coaches, and I want to be a repository of like where I think the best coaches reside on one website. And like, that's us. And if you use us for group coaching or just to do your own lower cost thing, like more power to you. I think that that's like a resource. That's why we have it as a resource, the community.
That's great that you do that. That's yeah, that can let an individual, dig into their needs. Yeah, that's great. Two other things I wanted to chat with you about. One is, AI is being discussed everywhere and anywhere. and what will it look like? And there's a lot of maybe energy behind it, but there's a lot of consternation too. Do you see that as immediately having any role in what you're doing and training?
Yeah, so let me just start by saying I love ChatGPT. I use it a lot for writing and for kind of synthesizing and making things more succinct. And I think it's an incredible tool. And I also think it's a great tool for learning a concept, like in your brain. You know, like there's this a podcast rather that I listen to. It's like a tech podcast, and one of the guys who speak on it has been doing a meditation practice and using like Claude to give him feedback on his meditation practice. That is incredible use of AI, right? Because it's like, you know, you're saying, hey, Claude, he's saying, hey, Claude, I did this thing yesterday. I'm finding I can't go, you know, I'm just making this up. I can't go past 5 minutes. What are some things I can start doing to like help me get deeper in my meditation practice? And then Claude comes back with suggestions. He tries them, then he goes back and says like how it worked or what other suggestions does Claude have. That's like a great use of AI. And people in the tech space often talk about, oh, AI coaching, how great will that be? And I think that is a great idea. I mean, certainly like one-on-one, you can, you know, maybe you're learning things about yourself. You're learning about maybe you could have changed the way you responded to in a situation, or maybe you're trying to figure out how to pitch your boss on something. All of that are great uses of AI, and that's coaching, right? I think that the downfall for AI is that it's as much as we would love to like kind of hook it up to our brain, it doesn't exactly work that way. So you still have to like be a human in a human world. So, you know, like what happens then when you're in the moment? Are you going to pause that conversation and go to your phone and try to figure out how to respond to this person where you're having a disagreement? That seems unlikely. You know, there's a component about having to live in the world and do things in real time. And then there's also a component of learning from other humans. And I think, you know, the way adults learn, like the adult pedagogy, basically there are like a few like pillars. And one of the things that helps adults learn is like teaching, which is like means that you have to synthesize yourself in order to teach others. And it's also reflecting, discussing, you know, and even like just connecting with other humans. And so I think that it's like one component of learning, which is really, really valuable. But there's also this really important part about just like living in the world as a human, and there's no substitute from learning from humans. Because as much as we would all love to just snap our fingers and be excellent at like psychological safety, it is something we all have to practice, right? I mean, it's also a mindset too. And so you can learn it a little bit, but what if you don't even know the questions to ask? You know, you don't know what you don't know. And like, that's the kind of thing where like experts can come in and really like expedite that growth. And, you know, I think the other thing to remember is like group coaching. I always love it because it's like affordable because you're dividing an expert's rate by a group. But the other reason that it works really well and coaches really like it is because people learn from each other in the group, and they realize like, oh, I'm not the only human that has these thoughts. Or like, oh, wow, like the way I look at problems is super different from the way that person looks at problems. I never realized that. And like, there just is a lot that you learn from like connecting with humans, and we are social animals. So it's like this education component that's like incredible about AI, but in the end, like if we're going to live in a world full of humans, I think you have to learn how to human, you know?
Yeah, you have to take your PhD in human. That's great. Well, listen, Francie, this has been very educational this morning. We want to thank you so much. This is invaluable information, and I hope everybody gets access to it and can visit your website and so forth. So remind us if someone needs to reach you or reach your website, what your contacts are.
Yeah, the best thing is to go to the website. So it's terawatt.co and no.co. So terawatt.co. And there's like a contact page, and that's the best way to reach out to me. If they're interested in like posting, I do a lot of posting on Terawatt as like an individual, Francie, on LinkedIn, sorry. Ooh. A lot of posting on LinkedIn under Francie Jane, but then also Terawatt does it under LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's like our main social platform. And then like you, I love doing podcasts, and this year I'm kind of like devoting to spending a lot of time on podcasts. So there's probably a podcast near you where I'm speaking about Terawatt.
Well, we're fortunate to have you, so thank you. Okay, well, I think we'll let you go, and hope to see you again soon.
Okay, thank you so much, Jim.
Bye there. Well, thank you for joining us today. I want to thank our guest, Ms. Francie Jane. Really interesting perspectives that we all can benefit from. And thank you for attending. We hope you got some insights out of today's session that you can actually put to use immediately. Our podcasts focus on interviews with subject matter experts and people that are already leading self-directed lives so that you can see exactly what one can accomplish doing your own personal development. You can check out newsletters, podcasts, and extensive reference materials at lifelongfulfillment.com. You can also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, your favorite podcast channel, and KFred Internet Radio when it suits you. I'm Jim Boswell. I'm your host. And until next time, ask yourself, what's your current personal development priority? Thanks. Look forward to seeing you again.
Lifelong fulfillment, vision in action. You left. Lifelong fulfillment, vision in action.